off the rail. Welcome to Don't Pick the Scab podcast. Today we welcome Joe Dillon, a seasoned divorce mediator with a unique blend of financial expertise and deep personal insights. Joe specializes in guiding couples through complex divorce negotiations, helping them reach fair agreements that protect both their emotional well-being and financial stability. His empathetic approach and strategic guidance make difficult conversations more manageable, especially for men over 40. Because we suck. Navigating the challenges of divorce. Joe's experience can provide invaluable clarity, ensuring that men can move forward with confidence, fairness, and financial security. Get ready to learn how effective mediation can transform the divorce experience. All right, Joe, tell us about yourself, and I got some questions for you. Welcome to the Don't Pick the Scab podcast with the premise of connecting men over 40 with the tools and community to thrive in their divorce recovery either before, during, or after a divorce.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So a little bit about me. I've been mediating 28 years, private practice for 17. My background is actually finance and negotiation. So I have an MBA in finance. So it's a little bit of a non-traditional route, right? Most people think of mediators as either lawyers or mental health professionals, and about 90% of divorce mediators fall into those two buckets. The other 10% are the classic other. And of the other, I'm probably one fraction of that 10%. But I really feel like having this kind of background brings clarity, it brings focus, it brings analysis to the process, and it helps people make better decisions. Because really, when you think about it, right, 3 of the 4 issues in a divorce are finance, right? Child support, alimony, property division, right? So 75% of your divorce involves numbers. And so by using a process like that and focusing on the numbers, we're able to help clients. And that's the key thing here, right? So, having realistic settlements is going to help couples understand what's possible rather than what I'm entitled to or what my friend told me I should get, and so that's where we take a lot of that emotion out of the process. And we really we treat it like a business transaction, quite frankly. And at the end of the day, as you kind of see our 98% case resolution rate kind of speaks for itself, right? We're able to pretty much guide everybody through. Yeah. So it works, it works. It might not be the most fun you ever have. I promise. I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to help you avoid your divorce from blowing up so you can see your kids, have some money in your bank, and move on with your lives,
What inspired you to become a divorce mediator, and what do you find most rewarding about your work?
Yeah, so I am the classic case of this won't happen to me, right? So my parents litigated their divorce. So back in the 80s, right, before mediation, I mean, mediation's been around since the 60s. California started divorce mediation in 1961, but this is back before mediation was a thing. And so they had the lawyers, they had the courtroom battle. It went on for a few years, screaming and yelling. I sat in the back of the courtroom, good times. And, my father's Irish, my mom's Italian. So, 2 very calm, mellow type nationalities, calm personalities. Yeah, absolutely. Placid, like Lake Placid. And so really it was just a battle. And it was such a battle that they got so mad at each other that the last time I saw my father was in the courthouse out in the hallway when I was 15. And that was it. I didn't see him, never saw parenting time, never heard from him again. And then in 2019, I got a letter that he died, and that was it. So that was my relationship with him, basically. And those years before, he had moved out, and then they were fighting and not talking. So I really only had a relationship with him probably about 10 years, right? And then so when I think about it, right, as I got older, I always found that I avoided conflict, right? I was always the peacemaker. I always wanted everybody to stop yelling. And I was working in corporate for a while, and I was doing a lot of big, high-powered kind of financial negotiations, multi-million-dollar contracts, right? Working with lawyers and legal teams and clients and customers. And I was having lunch, true story, having lunch with my mother-in-law one day, and she's like, I have a friend who's a mediator. I think you would be good at that. So you're like,
Wow.
What's that? Right? And this was going back to probably 2007 or whatever it was. And I had been mediating in a corporate setting, just not in a divorce world. And so back in 2007, I started taking classes, and in 2008, we opened up equitable mediation. And really, it's my experience as a kid of divorce, a litigated divorce, who I watched my mom struggle financially because she gave up my dad's pension in exchange for the house. She was only working part-time at the time, so the numbers didn't really prove out. She worked 3 jobs, and I just watched this whole thing unfold and I'm like, man, it doesn't have to be this way. And so that's the story I've got, and that's what I bring to this process because I say, look, I can tell you the way it could go sideways. There's a lot of ways, and here's one of them. Or if we focus on X, Y, and Z, you have a far better chance of both getting through this as amicably as you can, still remaining co-parents, right? Because that's also the key. Your kids don't care about your marriage, right? You're not husband and wife. You're still mom and dad. They still want you at the soccer games, at the graduations, right? I didn't have any of that. And so that's really my modus every single day. Say, guys, like your kids, they don't care what's going on here. They want mom and dad, right? And they want to see you guys on Christmas and they want to have X, Y, and Z. So that's really the personal story. And as we say in our profession, you're not supposed to get in the box, right? You're not supposed to get in the box with the clients. So I stand really dangerously close to the edge because I care about these people, right? I see what's happened to them. And so that's my story. And that's kind of really ties into what inspires me to do this and it keeps me showing up every single day, right? Because I just feel like every day I go home, I feel like, that's another family I may have saved. And those kids will see their parents model that and then that'll improve their marriage. And you're like, how that saying goes, you throw the stone in the pond and it creates infinite ripples. That's how I feel about this. I really do. And I kind of am proud of that because at the end of the day, I kind of can say, hey, you know what? Hopefully I'm making the world a slightly better place despite this terrible circumstance. So that's kind of my story.
Oh, so what are the tools, the differences between corporate mediation and divorce mediation? And what are
Yeah.
some of the similarities and some of the differences?
Well, in a corporate setting, right, it seems like with a corporate setting, there's really one path forward. So I was negotiating sales contracts, right? So you either get the sale or you don't. And really, both parties seem to want to make a deal, right? It's very rare where a customer or a salesperson are going to walk away with something. If they've agreed on the price, then it really becomes a matter of the terms, right? And so in that case, there's a stronger affinity to want to complete your negotiations at that point. In divorce, however, in mediation, it's a voluntary process. And as we say in our profession, we have a phrase called BATNA, which is best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So somebody says, well, what's my BATNA? If I don't, for example, David, you and I are going to go out for pizza tonight, and you're like, I want to go for Chinese food. And I'm like, dude, we agreed on pizza. So my BATNA is to tell you I'm not going out with you. I'm getting pizza, right? I still get what I want. In a divorce, there's really what we call a WATNA, which is the worst alternative to negotiated agreement, meaning in a mediation, you're now litigating if you don't mediate, right? It's going sideways. And so we have to really work hard to keep the parties there because a lot of them don't think that that's going to be bad. They're like, well, if we can't work it out in mediation, I'll just get a lawyer. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're about to step into, right? So in corporate, more willing to make a deal. Everybody's kind of posturing. This lawyer's firing off this letter. The mediator's trying to get the sides together. But as the mediator in a corporate setting that they're going to come to terms eventually. You all can just put on your, big girl and big boy pants and, do your thing that you get paid for. But in my world of mediation, I have to work really hard to keep the parties there. That I think is the biggest difference.
Well, so how
That.
does your financial background enhance your ability to mediate divorce cases?
Yeah, so I think it's the key. I really do. And guys
Wow.
will appreciate this, right? Because a lot of times people come in, right? I don't know if you've heard of this magical place called the internet, right? You can learn anything you want, David, and all of it is true. 100% of it is correct. Absolutely, 100%. Throw in one of those chat bots and you got it, right? You're an expert. At the end of the day, right? People, they have this disconnection from reality. They think what they're entitled to or what I'm going to get. And, well, I talked to my friend and she got $10,000 a month in alimony and I'm going to get that too. And it's like, well, yeah, her husband was the CEO of a company. And, in my case, the husband works as a cashier at the supermarket. Like I make $65,000 a year, whatever, right? And you say to yourself, like, okay, guys, we need to bring you back to reality. And, there's a lot of screaming and yelling. So with our process, there's two things we do. The first we do is a budgeting process. So we have the couple together. This is difficult, but together work on a joint budget. It's all of your spending for the previous 12 months. Because in my experience, there's a household financial manager, right? In my house, it happens to be my wife. You can quickly figure out in a couple which one it is. It's usually the guy, but not always. And then when they do that budget, it's an exercise in reality because then the uneducated person says, wow, we spend $800 a month on groceries or the kids' karate lessons or $1,000 a month. It's like, yeah, where have you been? Right. And so we get them to do that. And then we get them to do an individual apart budget that's going to map out their forward looking 12 months as individuals. So how much do you need? How much do you need? And when you're getting in those conversations about support, particularly alimony, and one person who is the lower earner is saying, well, I need X, Y, and Z, and I am entitled to, or I deserve, and let's use that $10,000 number. I say, well, okay, here's your soon to be X's budget. If they give you $10,000, you have a $5,000 a month surplus and they're short $4,000. Does that make sense? And when you show the numbers to people, I truly believe people in their heart of hearts know what's right and are for the most part, can be convinced to be reasonable if you show them the information and they're like, crap, they might not be happy that I'm right. So we do that budgeting process, right? That helps. Then we have a balance sheet. Again, treating it like a business transaction. Don't tell me that we decided I'm going to keep the house. That's a vacuum. That's one of many, many items. I give them a worksheet that puts all of their assets and all of their liabilities on there. Then we take a look at it as an entire picture. It's like a portfolio, right? You would save for retirement. You're not going to just buy one stock. You're going to buy multiple things, right? You're going to spread out your risk. You're going to take some assets, take some liabilities. And so again, we show them the whole picture. And by doing that, we say, okay, here's the whole picture. If you get this, what are you going to give in exchange for that, right? That's negotiation. It's not, well, I take. It's if I am going to go out to the movies with you and we're going to go to dinner beforehand, I should either let David pick the movie or the restaurant, right? So that at least we're
Yep.
engaged in something, right? It's fair, it's balanced. And so by having those two processes, I think it really helps the uninitiated because a lot of people don't love numbers the way I do. It really puts it out in front of them and then they look at it and they're like, yeah, this makes sense. It's hard to argue with it, right? You're like, and then I always play the devil's advocate. I'm like, hey, if I miss something, I'm not a rocket scientist here. If I miss something, convince me, talk to me. And, 99 times out of 100, the numbers are right there. Numbers don't lie, right? So that's how we really keep them on track using those processes. And it really helps take that temperature of the room down because it becomes all about the facts, right? All about the facts.
What about that 2%?
Oh, the two boy.
Generally, hey, we got to get the good and the bad. What
Yeah,
about
we
that
do.
2%? What about
Yeah.
the general, let's say
Yeah.
2%? Talk to me.
Yeah, the 2% is angry. Basically, what happens is the 2% is the individual who does not want the divorce because they know that if they get the divorce, it's not going to be as charmed for them in their lives. And, with those folks, they just are so they haven't processed their emotions. They picked the scab. They really are so angry at
Dang.
what's going on because they want to control the process. They want to be the one to file for divorce. They want to be the one to walk out. How dare you do this to me? And it's like, well, wait a minute. I didn't do this to you. This is a failing of everybody, right? Marriage, too, to tango and all. And you
Yep.
have to take a hard look and be willing to take a hard look at the role whoever you is in this example, played in what happened in this conflict, right? And some people just aren't willing to do that. It's always the blame, blame, blame. And what's that though? You got one finger pointing, you got three pointing back at you, right? That's the classic case. And guy to guy here, it's like men are notorious for this. Notorious because, right? We're just, we're fixers, we're controllers, we're caretakers, we're going to do this. We're men of action, right? And it's like, well, maybe stop taking some actions and start doing some thinking and some reflecting and take some quiet time. Maybe get yourself some chamomile tea. No shame in that, right? And sit quietly with a book at night and say, yeah, maybe I could have done things differently, right? So those are the 2%ers, unfortunately, the ones that come to the process probably too early. They should have taken some time to process their emotions, work with a divorce coach, work with a therapist, get that anger out so that they could come to the table and be ready to negotiate. So those are our 2%ers.
Yeah, but those two percenters don't realize, man, when you throw it to the wind and then the judge decides, man, it can go any way. It has no, I mean, they're just making decisions. Boom, boom, boom.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tell people all the time, right? Like, I'm a big fan of crime shows, right? CSI and all this stuff. Like, in 60 minutes, we can solve a complex murder case. Awesome, right? But what people don't realize is that that's a court of law, right? We know it's bad to kill somebody. I think you don't have to be a lawyer to know you can't do that, right? And so when we see those shows on TV as courts of law, we go, well, the person comes in and they're guilty and it's very clear cut. In divorce, it's what we call a court of equity, meaning whatever a third party, i.e., a judge, decides is equitable. Well, what the hell does equitable mean? It doesn't mean equal. It means fair and equitable. And it's up to that third party, who, by the way, has met you about all of 5 minutes, to
Yep.
tell you what you're going to get and is going to happen for the rest of your life, right?
Like
And so,
that.
like that. And judges are people and they're wonderful people. My gosh, talk about somebody who takes it on all day, right? Like, these are people who are listening to every single thing. They have a split second to make a decision on what they think is fair. And even though some states, like, for example, we practice in multiple states, but I'll pick California. We practice in California, and yeah, there's a guideline for child support and there's a guideline for alimony, but notice it's a guideline. It doesn't say this is absolutely the number. Parties can agree to something else. A judge can agree to give something else, right? It's just a starting point. So people aren't clear that if they make a deal in mediation and then they wind up trying to get it litigated, it may actually turn out worse for them, right? Because this third party. And so that's why we tell them, try to control it in the mediation space. You get to make the decision. You get to control the outcome, right? Rather than letting a third party who doesn't know you, try to control that outcome, or in fact, absolutely control that outcome, not try. They're going to dictate what you get, right?
What are some of the biggest misconceptions about divorce mediation?
I'd say probably the number one is that I'm going to tell you what you're going to get, right? People are like, well, you're going to tell me how much alimony I get, right? Or how much child support. I'm like, well, no, I'm going to show you guidelines. I'm going to show you ranges. I'm going to share with you options. I'm going to share with the other clients did. I'm going to analyze your situation with you. I'm going to work together to help you guys ask questions and negotiate and go back and forth. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to tell you what to do, right? That's what a judge does. A judge decides. And so mediation is ideal for people who want to be empowered, right? Who want to make their own decisions. I work for both people simultaneously, and it's a tightrope, right? You think about it. In other words, in order to get one person to give something, than the other person to get, I've got to be really careful so I don't look like I'm just advocating on the party who's getting something, right? And then I have to remember to shift gears and go the other way and say, well, if they give you this, what are you going to give them in exchange, right? And so it's a really fine balancing line. And that's what I think people have to understand, is that you have to come here because you want to make those decisions, not because you want me to tell you what to do. I can share with you like what other clients have done, and I look at, I've met thousands of people, and, you look at their cases and you go, yeah, you guys remind me of these 5 clients I had. And let me just throw those options on the table. Let's see if those work. But really, that's the key, right? You want to be told what to do, you hire a lawyer and you go to court. You want to be empowered to do it yourself, you work with somebody like me.
Wow. In your experience, how do men typically handle the emotional aspect of divorce negotiations?
Yeah. Oh boy. How much time do you have? Yeah, for the most part, they don't. That's the trick,
Oh,
right?
there you go.
Yeah. So what's interesting about us, right? So my partner, who's also my wife, Cheryl, she's a divorce coach. So she works with me here, and I handle, the financial, tactical, paperworky stuff, right? All that process stuff. She handles the emotional stuff. And so it's totally voluntary, right? You don't have to work with her, but you can schedule one-on-one sessions with her. My work is always one-on-two, right? I'm always working with both parties at the same time. She's only working one-on-one. And so a lot of that stuff is really, that's the key, because the anger will eat you up. It will destroy your life. It'll destroy your relationship with your kids. It'll destroy your relationship with your ex. And what I see is, you think about it, right? Our clients, now, of course, people of any age can get divorced, right? But our clients tend to run between ages 45 and 55, right? Somewhere in that zone. Now, I'm 56. I still think I'm young, right? I still have plenty of years left on this planet. So, Matt, let's split the difference and call it 50. Imagine if you get divorced at 50 and you live to age 95. That's 45 years of being angry. Why? Right? Like, why would you do that to yourself? The other person isn't sitting at home thinking, being angry at you. They're off doing their thing, having their life, having a good time, maybe dating or remarried or whatever, right? And so it's really important to take that time to process those emotions, to work with somebody you're comfortable with. Whether, look, I've met lots of great guys. There's, divorce coaches for dads, divorce coaches for men, right? You don't have to work with my wife who's female, right? If that doesn't matter, therapists, all those things that are important for guys to do, because we're all just the sort of rubbing dirt on it, right? And I'll be fine, I'm okay, right? It's like you might think you are, but underneath the surface is what's really perking. And that's really what I want listeners to take away from this, right? Is that if you don't work on you and you don't work on you internally, guess what's going to happen? You're going to meet somebody else and they're going to think you're cool and charming for a few years. And this pattern is going to repeat itself and repeat itself. And here you are again. And, we call them repeat offenders. You're like, well, obviously you didn't take the time to figure out what went sideways the first time, because now this is the second time or the third time. And, and that's what you want to help people avoid, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to say, look, there's no shame in it, right? We're humans, we're fallible. If you're not learning, what are you doing, right? You have to learn and grow. So that's really the key, is that those guys, like I said, those 2%ers who come in are usually the guys who are really angry. They're probably never going to look at themselves. But you hopefully get some guys in the process where there can be breakthrough moments. And these people have been in such dysfunctional relationships, right? They've been in these places where they've been arguing for so long. And then there's this moment in mediation where perhaps the wife cries or breaks down, and then the husband is like, well, I never knew that. Why didn't you tell me that? And she's like, I've been telling you that for 15 years. It's like, maybe this is an opportunity to learn about your listening skills, for example.
Wow. What kind of strategies do you recommend for men to stay focused and calm during mediation?
Yeah. Yeah. So I say this as a professional negotiator, not as a divorce mediator, or not to make light of the situation. But, there's a reason they call negotiation game theory, right? It's a game. And if you realize, first of all, the absurdity of it, right, is that you go into something not knowing the outcome, not knowing X, Y, Z, right? I think part of it is going in with a plan. And one of those plans is to remain calm and do whatever it is you need to do. Now, so it's pretty funny, off to the side of my desk, you can't see here, I have these little rocks, right? So I have these little stones, these flat stones that sometimes if I'm stressed out, I just pick this thing up. It's nice and smooth, one of those skimming stones.
Yep.
I just rub it in between my fingers and I feel instantly better. So find that token, or that breathing, or that song that you play internally in your head that calms you down, right? Because if you go in knowing that this too shall pass, I've got a plan, I will remain calm, I will go forward with my plan, I will adjust as needed, then you don't fall prey to the emotions. You don't fall prey to
Mhm.
the trap, right? You want to know that, look, it's going to get bumpy. It's going to be hard. It really is. But I think if you go in prepared, that's the key. A lot of people, man, they come in and, like, if I say to them, look, say you got in a car in New York and you just decided to drive to California, a small town in California, not Los Angeles, that you could probably easily find, and you didn't have a GPS and you didn't have a map. Do you think you'd get there? Maybe, but it wouldn't exactly be efficient, right? You need a roadmap, you need a plan, you need a path. So that's what I say to people. I'm like, find your calm, find your center, have your plan, and know that there's going to be bumps. You have to give to get. And, that's really what's going to get you through this process. Just no other way around it.
There you go. How can men ensure that they're achieving a fair and equitable settlement when they're using a mediator? What are some things they can look for?
Yeah. So I always say cash flow is king, right? In other words, numbers don't lie. You do those budgets we talked about. At the end of the day, you want to make sure, as we say, that the parties will live roughly on par with each other for some period of time, right? It doesn't do when you've got kids. Most of our clients have kids, so I'll talk to the guys with kids about that. Is
Mhm.
that as much as you just want to exact revenge, right? And you want to get that pound of flesh, true story. It's like we had a client couple. He's the CFO of a bank. Wife worked inside the home raising kids. He had a great lawyer. She had a terrible lawyer. He got to keep the beach house, got to keep the house. Kids got all the game systems over there. He's got the car, all the stuff, right? She is literally living in an apartment that is adjacent to a railroad track. So now you're a 12-year-old boy and you say to yourself, well, gee, do I want to go to mom's house or do I, at the railroad track, or
Yep.
do I want to go to dad's house at the beach, right? As a New Jersey client. And I'm like, well, listen, man, that's the mother of your kid. You want your kid to have, because you got a 50-50 parenting plan. So half the time your kid's going to be miserable living by a railroad track. You got to think through that stuff. Even though you really want to, you want to pull it out there, you got to say, well, by giving support to this now ex-spouse of mine, what I'm really doing is creating an environment for my kid, right? And I'm really helping. And so that's what I think can help people understand what's fair, right? It's not about the hard dollars or the numbers. It's about the lifestyle. It's about the circumstances. It's about, is it fair that I can buy both the PlayStation and the Xbox
Mhm.
and the Nintendo Switch, whereas my wife is maybe having them do crossword puzzles on pieces of paper, right? It's like those are the lifestyle choices we want people to focus on rather than the hard dollars. Are you able to make ends meet? Yes, yes. Can you both drive a car? You want somebody driving a 25-year-old car, driving your kid around to soccer practice? No, I wouldn't, right? And so those are the things, David, I'd say to people look for. That's how you know when you've got fair agreements in terms of, your support. And then when it comes to property, like I said, you use that balance sheet, you look at it all out there. And the phrase I use is I like to call it the salad bar approach, right? So I love salad bars. I'm obsessed with salad bars. You go down the line, right? You get the lettuce, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the carrots. The idea being that you want a little bit of everything, right? You don't want a plate of lettuce. You don't want a plate of just tomatoes. And so when you look at it all in one place, you can say, well, we each got a car. I got a 401. You got an IRA. We're going to sell the house, split the proceeds. I take on this credit card. You take on that credit card. Yeah, you know what? When I look at the big picture, it looks fair as opposed to just focusing on one asset. Like you got the house. Yeah, but guess what? The house has a $500,000 mortgage on it and you have a 401k worth $600,000, right? So you got to look at the big picture to understand. And that's really the takeaway, right? Look at the overall big picture, look at the lifestyle and look at the balance. That's how I would say to figure out what's fair.
So, how do you help clients navigate sensitive topics like alimony or property division? Those are the big two, other than the
Yeah.
kids. Those are the big.
Yeah. And we start off with non-numerical things, lifestyle, right? We talk about what is it you've been doing? What does your life look like as a married couple, right? Did you make a decision where one of you was going to stay and raise the kids and work inside the home? Did you move around a lot? Did you buy this house recently or has it been a long time? Right? What is the expectations you each have for your lives moving forward? Right? And then when we start getting into the numbers, we first start with those budgets, right? Again, to level set, what's realistic here? What's needed? Right? You can't have an intelligent conversation about how much alimony somebody's going to pay or receive if you don't know how much somebody has to give or how much someone needs. And by again putting those factual things out on the table, we sort of deflate the balloon early, right? We want to say, look, here's the bottom line, right? This is what it costs to live. I'm originally from New Jersey. I lived in Chicago for a while and I live in California now. And these are not cheap places to live, right? And so when people get divorced in these places, they say, oh, well, you could get an apartment for $800. It's like, yeah, if it was 1995, maybe, but that was 30 years ago. So by using that factual information, deflating that balloon, that helps with alimony. And the same goes with property division, right? We talk about goal-based negotiation, right? What's your goal? Is your goal to keep the kids in the house? All right, let's find a way to do that rather than, well, you got this and I got that. What's your goal? I want to retire early. Okay, sounds like you might like to be more interested in keeping more of the retirement assets. What are you willing to exchange for that? So you see the difference. It's not about the dollars and cents. It's about the goal. It's about what's the end game here. That's how you do it. And that's a great mindset for guys to have when they go into negotiations. She's not getting a penny or I'm not giving X dollars. What's the goal? To keep our kids in the house. What's the goal for me to retire? What's the goal? Dot, dot, dot. All right. So I hope that makes sense.
Yep. What's the goal? That's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah.
How has divorce mediation evolved over the years, especially
Yeah.
from 40?
Wow. The good news is here's a great statistic that we track. So when we first started practicing, the first year I started keeping track of this, I think it was 2009. We had probably about 10% of our client couples agreed to 50-50 parenting plans, right? So where you had
Okay.
true joint custody, shared custody, physical custody. Now it's about 85% of them. And so that is really to a kid who didn't see his dad is really heartwarming because it sends a really strong message that both parents are instrumental in raising kids, right? Now I have to give my mom the biggest shout out because 14-year-old boy starts having some questions about girls. And, normally you're going to turn to dad, and mom handled that conversation with aplomb, and was very open and honest. And even grandma kicked in, which I thought was amazing. Right. And so, those are the things, right, that you don't think about. And so that's been one of the major evolutions is I think people are starting to recognize, and for men especially, they're recognizing that I don't have to go the contentious, expensive legal route where I'm going to most likely get the short end of the stick. I can go to the mediation space where it's going to be more fair, more balanced, save money, save time, and come out with a 50-50 parenting plan or a 50-50 split of assets or something that I get to share how I feel, right? How I feel. I'm not just a paycheck or a meal ticket. Hey, listen, guess what? I want to take the kids on vacation too. I don't want to have that apartment over the bakery in downtown, right? I want the kids to want to spend time, not go, oh, dad's place smells, right? That's right. You want to make sure that it's balanced. And I've seen that evolve over time. Mediation has become a better space. And here's a fun fact, fun air quotes in my world, not a lot of fun, but 70% of divorces are filed by women. Yet 50% of the people who initiate mediation in our practice are men. So that tells me that they see the value. Even if they're not the one driving the divorce, they say, you know what? I think I could get a better deal here. I could get a fairer shake. And I believe in my heart of hearts, they're absolutely right.
Well, Joe, you have dropped the mic, buddy.
I'm glad to help.
Man, I got some more questions, but my men have a short attention span, like I told you.
That's all right.
Where can the men find you on internet?
Yeah. So best place is our website, equitablemediation.com, not spell it meditation. Totally different vibe, right? We want equitablemediation.com. And what you'll notice there's a learning center. And I encourage everybody to click on the learning center. I have been blogging for 17 years. I've been writing all kinds of articles. And one of our number one most visited posts is how to survive divorce as a man. I kid you not. It is one of our most popular posts, 25 tips. I've interviewed my male friends who are mental health professionals, male clients, former clients. What do they do? Even my buddies I know who are divorced. And guys, get out there, read, learn. An educated client is a good client for us. Get in that learning center. There's videos, there's podcasts, there's just absorb information and just know that there's experts who can help you, right? We all as men want to say, I can do it. Heck, man, I'm an only child. I'm the worst at this, right? I'm like, I can do it. I don't need your help, right? Take the help. This is what we go to school for. This is what we're professionally trained in, right? Learn, read, gather information, but then work with a professional. So hit up that learning center on equitablemediation.com. And when you're ready, there's a button that says talk to us. Click it, schedule a meeting with Cheryl, free call, see if mediation works for you, and happy to help you guys in any way we can.
All right. Well, Joe, I appreciate your time, man. We're gonna do this again because we just scratched the surface, and you're
What
so
I
much
said,
fun.
man, we could do this all day. So love to come back. My pleasure.
All right, sir. Hey, I appreciate you taking time to hang with me, and we definitely have you back. But hold on for a second.